happens in Iran when Iranians ask the Armenians, what are you celebrating? You know, they say Vartanants. The Armenians say, oh, it's the Battle of Avarai between the Armenians and the Persians. And the Iranians ask, who won the battle? The Armenians say, the Persians won it. And the Iranians say, then you shouldn't celebrate it. We should celebrate Vartanants since we won the battle.
Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. Now, what I'm going to say might raise lots of questions, but I'm going to ask a couple of questions before I say whatever I'm going to say and go from there. How many of you have read a book about Vartanants? How many of you?
Book or articles?
One over there. But completely, have you read a book about Vartanants? Who was the author of the book that you have read? Okay. Did you read in the preface that it says this is a web?
A what?
Web. Novel.
Yeah, it's web.
Okay. Do you, I'm sure you people understand what is a novel and what is history. If you read the preface of each book that you read for pleasure, for any reason, always read the preface very carefully and read something about the author, and you get the real essence of the book, what they are trying to tell you, why that book is written. Here we have a very great controversy which has been going on for years without coming to a definite conclusion. They say we had a wartime, and they say we had this, we had that. However, if you allow me, I will go slowly with the help of Weekend, who is going to read parts of it for me, and then anytime you have a question, please raise your hand, anytime, while he is reading or I'm talking. And I will try to explain and inform you about the question that you are asking. Yes.
Have you read Yenish?
Yes.
Thank
you. Yenish who, by the way? Yenish who?
you. You said you read it, so you must know who.
Right. Okay, looks like we have to change the way I was going to start. Yenish supposedly has written a book about Vartanants. And they say that it was written 11 years after the uprising. Intentionally, I'm not going to use the Vartanants war or barbarism or anything like that, because there was none. There was none. No battle, no war, no nothing. It was an uprising by a bunch of religious lunatics.
Why don't we get to that later?
Okay.
The part about the lunatics. So I'm going to be reading this, but I wish to say that I in no way endorse necessarily what I will be reading. I did not participate in the creation of this document, and I'm merely the reader. So I begin with a preface written by Stepan Sassounian in 1953 in Yerevan. Those fairy tales, with their sexton's worldview, have been told and taught throughout the centuries by the Armenian church historians. The patriarchal, simplistic, clerical, historiographic orientation is not only useless but harmful. In his Essays and Speeches in 1953 in Yerevan.
Okay, there you are. This guy was a great orator and a scholar, and that's how he concluded whatever happened at 451.
Who's the Sassounian?
Yes,
That's the communist.
he was a communist. I'm not concerned about he was communist or Hunchak or Tashnak or Ramlala or anything. But there is a factual statement made by him about this event.
His opinion.
His opinion.
So,
Okay.
Vasag or Vartan, do we have the courage to accept the truth? Introduction. The controversy surrounding Vasag and Vartan has been going on for centuries without reaching a definite conclusion. The truth which is supposed to prevail has been compromised greatly. It does not matter whose version of Armenian history one reads, somehow it tells the reader that he is not reading a factual, honest-to-goodness, complete history. The events, dates, and numbers do not come together. The authors who wrote the history of Vartanants tell us that he was ordered to chronicle the events 10 years after the fact. A shadow has been cast over the factuality of events which he has presented. The purpose of this essay is to restore Vasag's reputation, to clear his name. Yes, to clear Vasag's name, but not at the expense of degrading Vartan. Would it help if we completely discredit, insult, and expose Vartan in order to save and redeem Vasag? That would be a high price to pay. Even historians Yerishe and Ghazar Parpetsi did not do this. Why is it necessary that Vasag has to be compared with Vartan, or the other way around? Why do we have to create a traitor in order to have a hero? Why this hero worship? Is it necessary to glorify one who seems to be the real traitor and condemn the one who needs to be praised and glorified? Did Vasag commit a crime that deserved this? No. Did Vasag ever deny his faith? No. Did Vasag ever kill any Armenians? No. Did Vasag desert his country? No. Did Vasag plan and implement any act of terrorism against Armenia or the Armenians? No. Did Vasag betray his friends? No. Did Vasag fight against the Armenian army of Vartan? No. Is there any proof that Vasag joined the enemy? Based on what evidence did Yerishe or any other historian call him a traitor? Please read what Father Aginyan, another critic and analyst of the Battle of Avarai, writes about what Lusaluvarts, Nice, the commander of the Persian army, told Vasag before attacking the Armenians. Quote, Vasag, you stay in the woods. Do not get involved right now. We will take care of the rebels, and then you come in. And that is what Vasag and his soldiers did, waited in the back of the woods. They never raised their hands against the Armenians. Barpetsi, as well as K. Armin, a critic, or Manyan, a historian, and a well-known and respected Catholicos Papken Gulaserian, a historian and one of the founders of the Knights of Vartan and Catholicos at Antilias, and Gorun, the biographer of Mesro Bashtots and a contemporary of Barpetsi, all claim that Vasag died a Christian. He never denied his faith. To the end, he was a gentleman, never argued with or talked against Hosep Catholicos or the priests, nor against Armenian ministers at the trial in front of the Persian king. He could very well defend himself, but he did not. According to James Bandaljian, a lawyer and a critic of Vartanants, Ghazar Barpetsi, and Father Aginyan, Vasag was the greatest patriot of the Armenians because he was never accused of treason or betrayal of any Armenian cause. But he was a member of a TEM, the Armenian ministers and generals, including Vartan, that planned and plotted against the Persian king to help Armenians and Armenia. At the trial, letters and documents presented by the Armenian ministers and clergy and intended to discredit Vasag proved that A, he wrote letters to the Greek king asking for help to the Armenians. B, he planned to arrest and detain wealthy and famous Persians residing in Armenia as a way to force the Persian king to negotiate. C, he planned to destroy all of Armenia's Persian temples and exile the pagan priests. And D, get all his friends in neighboring countries to help him in the implementation of his plans. These were the accusations that were cited at the trial of Vasag in Persia. Was he a traitor or a great patriot who was betrayed by his fellow Christian Armenian ministers and clergy? The ministers, the Nakharars, and clergy were well aware that they were as guilty as Vasag for planning all the acts for which they now accused Vasag. As the chief architects of a plot against the Persian king, they had forced Vasag to sign and put his seal on the pages of the plot agreement. Indeed, they now accused and betrayed Vasag for the heroic deeds that they were supposed to commit together to help Armenia. Readers should be aware that Vasag was not imprisoned for a treasonable act against Armenians or Armenia, but because he joined the unity of ministers and clergy and worked with them against the Persian king for the benefit of Armenia.
Okay. Here. He read about the unity. This unity was formed by the Nakharas and generals to fight against the king. But they did not have manpower to do it. They said, we need Vasak with us. And Vasak would not sign it, would not join. He says, I am the king's governor over Armenia. I cannot betray him. How can I serve the two lords? You know, I'm employed by the king, and you guys want me to join you, and this and that. He did not. But one day they ambushed him, and they threatened his life. They said, we are going to kill you if you don't join. So after a long stand-up, he joined the unity, Mia Pamutyum. This was the very important word why they called him a traitor, because later on, they did not realize what's happening with this unity and what result it's going to bring, what devastation it's going to cause to Armenians and Armenia. What happened, they wrote letters to King of Greece to help him, to fight Hasgate. And they promised that they are going to help. By the time the Badvira came to Armenia, that king passed away, died. So his wife took over, and his wife would not honor what her husband promised to Armenians. Therefore, he says, if the Greeks do not help us, we cannot fight the king to the unity members. We cannot do it. And this is the reason he is called a traitor, because he pulled away from the Mia Pamutyum. Is that a good reason? Not at all. By not fighting the way they planned, he saved Armenian lives by thousands, and he saved Armenia at the same time. Now, please.
So was Vasak a great Marsbed in the service of the Persian king, a great governor obeying his master, or a great patriot who collaborated with his fellow Armenians and fell victim to their foul act of betrayal? In short, was he a patriot or a traitor? Choosing the right source. Armenian historians, philosophers commonly base their conclusions regarding Vartanants on the chronicles of Yerishe, but there are noteworthy exceptions. Thus, Father Aginian, a historian and critic, has completely rejected anything and everything coming from Yerishe and called him, quote, a phony, an impostor. Father Aginian bases all of his conclusions on the writings of Lazar Parpetsi. Even Yerishe admits that Parpetsi was at all times in the thick of things during the ferment that led to the Vartanants uprising, as well as during and after the battle. We don't know who was there first, Yerishe or Parpetsi, but we know this. Yerishe's account of the history of Vartanants is questionable to the extreme, as many experts have found. The names, numbers, and dates do not make sense. There are lots of discrepancies. His conclusions are unreliable. The lack of recorded material on historic events of the 4th and 5th centuries, coupled with the unavailability of new evidence, makes it very difficult to reconstruct a definitive chain of events connected with Vartanants. Many attempts have been made in the 20th century to rectify the issue, but none has been fully successful. As it stands now, we have no accurate and true history of Vartanants and the relationship of Vartan and Vasak. What we do have is enough evidence to discredit most of Yerishe's account and rely on that of Parpetsi. I believe that the resulting revision will lead to a true and dependable history of Vartanants, one that we might conscientiously transmit to our new generation. The facts. In order to understand the complex history of Vartanants, one must lay a foundation. The veracity of the following statements has been established beyond doubt. Fact. Hasgate, the Persian king, was quite adamant in his quest to force Armenia into religious conversion to paganism. Fact. The king called all Armenian ministers to his palace to inform them of this quest. Fact. All but Vartan accepted Hasgate's offer. fact. When the ministers returned to Armenia, Vartan gathered his family, children, servants, and fled the country. He ran off to the country of the Greeks.
Let me,
Yeah.
okay, here we see something happening that many of you maybe did not know about it. When the ministers came back from Hasgil's palace, where they had been ordered that they should change their faith, and they supposedly accepted it and they came to Armenia. But when they arrived in Armenia, all the people, they threw rocks at Vartan and they called him a traitor. So, first traitor at that time, first traitor people called was Vartan. And he could understand it, or for what reason I don't know. This man comes saying anything to anybody, picks up his family, servants, and everybody, and takes off and leaves the country. And this event that I just talked about is not written intentionally in the books that Vartanants husbands publish. Intentionally, it is not published. And there was an article a month ago in Norgyang regarding this very point, saying that intentionally they don't publish this so that people will not be aware of it. Because as Sassounian pointed, the first statement that we can read, they teach the people things that are not true because the church wants it so. They thought lots of things that were not true. And our Knights of Vartan Brotherhood, even, we mentor Vartan, and that's all. But Vartanants Brotherhood is completely different, based on different ideals and ethics. And so we mentor him as what the church gave us, like he's a saint and a hero. The brave, Vartan the brave, and Vartan the saint. That's why Knights of Vartan chose him as a mentor, and we follow. We don't have anything to follow actually on Vartan, excuse me. When we say this, maybe I'm making a terrible mistake, but I don't think so.
You think we should have followed Vahan? Vahan instead?
Vahan he changed his faith. He was not Christian. Vahan. Did you read that anywhere? They don't print it. But there are lots of books that have.
But Vahan won the war for the Armenians.
He was in the country helping the Armenian people.
Okay.
That's all. He did not initiate or cause the Noasak Treaty. I tell
He
you.
organized the guerrilla warfare for 30 years.
No war.
Guerrilla warfare.
Skirmishes here and there.
Yeah.
Okay. I tell you about the Noasak Tashing a little later, if you permit me.
There's a series of other facts here which
Go ahead.
are interesting facts which I don't think many of us knew before, and I suppose we would be justified in asking you where you got your facts.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
When Vasak learned of Vartan's escape, he wrote a letter to Vartan saying, quote, "Why are you leaving your country? Why don't you tell me what you got in mind? Why don't you let me help you?" End quote. Got that in quotes. And send after Vartan with a group of soldiers and others. Varpati tells us he was among this group. Vartan took Vasak's advice and came back. Fact, when the ministers came back to Armenia, there was no leader in the country except the clergy and Revanants. Remember, Vartan had fled. Vasak secured a royal decree, a letter from the king, giving them freedom of worship. Fact, Revanants did not accept the letter or its stipulations. Fact, soon after, all the ministers got together and formed a united front against Hasgerd. With the exception of Vasak, they all signed the Unity Declaration. Fact, Vartan was the commander-in-chief of the Armenians. Fact, Vasak was the Persian king's representative and governor of Armenia. Vasak's province bordered Persia. Hasgerd held Vasak's 2 sons in Persia as hostages. When the Avarad battle was imminent and the generals had to organize for the battle and get ready to fight, most of them were with Vasak. So was the majority of the Armenian people. The majority of Armenians did not want to fight. The battle was not political. Fact, the battle was for taxes, not religion, not political. Vartan did not want to fight. The ministers and generals did not want to fight. Fact, the whole battle lasted about an hour. Fact, Vartan was dead in the first hour. Let's accept the fact that in the middle of the 5th century, the wisest, most politically savvy, and far-sighted statesman in Armenia was Vasak, judging by his actions vis-a-vis the Vartanants events. Let's accept the fact that Vartan was not the man that we had imagined, a brave, noble, daring, and intelligent